Today is a good day. Today is a victory. A small victory, mind you, but a big one in the scope of our collective consciousness. General approval for Israel across the globe has gone down in recent years. I mean, about time, considering how long Zionist settler violence has been going on for. I have maintained a lot of scrutiny towards Critical in my online presence, and partially that has to do with the fact that Critical chooses to not speak out against atrocities when they are happening, seemingly with the interest of how his audience will respond to this. This is just an observation, I'm not making any claims. Not to mention, the way he's talked about criticism of fascism in the past is definitely something I've had a point of contention with, in particular with this long video essay that I just re-uploaded yesterday. If you weren't aware, that is a re-upload from the year 2022, which was supposed to be a 5-year anniversary from an even previous upload by Moist Critical himself about an analysis of fascist elements in children's media. Without getting too deep into it, which I think the video mainly speaks for itself, Moist Critical takes issue with any kind of discourse that has to do with authoritarian themes and elements and lessons that are being taught in children's media. And I believe that he downplays the very necessary conversation of dissecting fascist media in order to avoid it, in order to not have children grow up into horrible adults. In my admittedly far too long video about this topic, I tried to make the claim that it's still something worth talking about. The CNN writer didn't do a good job of presenting the case, but I wanted to at least explain that it was still a conversation worth having on a normal basis. We don't want to normalize authoritarian thinking. We don't want to normalize fascist ideology. We also want to make it very clear that when we're talking about fascism, especially considering the tendencies of fascism through reactionary thinking, we're not using these words in some kind of pejorative. We're very specifically using these words to describe a literal tendency within this movement. In my opinion, Critical has been much more critical of politicians, billionaires, plutocrats. His rhetoric is far sharper than it used to be, and he's actually identifying systems of power and criticizing the very system of power to begin with. So, let me just say right now that anything I say from here on out, I just want to say that I am very proud of Moist Critical. He's grown. I'm sorry. I'm gonna smoke a bowl. Okay, this is to you. Cheers. I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm gonna assume that you have already watched the almost 3-hour-long video essay that I did and re-uploaded recently. And if you did, then that's cool. If you didn't, that's fine too. Just know that this video is meant to encapsulate my current opinions of Moist Critical and to reflect on some of those aforementioned points that I made in the previous video. And it should be stated that all opinions in that 3-hour-long video essay should be understood as my opinions as of late 2022. The first thing we're gonna do in this video is go over Critical's new video. I can't believe this timeline.
It's so crazy. It's so despicable, and yet it's stopped being surprising now.
Well, neither can I. It is pretty baffling what we're going through these days, and I'm glad to see that you share the sentiment.
P. Diddy just got sentenced to 50 months in prison. Yeah, he got 4 years in the slammer. That's it. Basically the Jeffrey Epstein of the music industry gets away with a slap on the wrist. I mean, they're probably going to be supplying him with baby oil in the cell at this point. He just got 50 months in prison. That's it. And truthfully, I'm not even confident they're gonna keep him incarcerated for the full 50 months. I don't even think he'll be in there that long. He'll be in and out of the slammer lickety split. I feel like it'll be like that scene in SpongeBob where SpongeBob and Patrick steal a balloon on free balloon day, so the cops like close the cell for a split second and tell him to, you know, scram. That's what I think's gonna happen with P. Diddy here. This is just abhorrent.
This is a very strong and effective opening. Although it's not directly tied to imperialist discourse, it is related to a lot of the same players since P. Diddy and Donald Trump have collaborated on advertising before. He doesn't make that point specifically in his video, but he makes that point anyway.
This is just clear, irrefutable proof unfolding in front of your eyes that some people genuinely are above the law. Actually, it's not like conspiratorial, it is just the facts of it. It's crazy. Your Honor, did you stop to consider for a moment that my client has an unbelievable amount of money?
Through other means of being able to illustrate the overall structural critique of not just P. Diddy, but also Israel as well.
Dude, it is crazy the times we're living in. I also just saw today fucking Benjamin Netanyahu just openly stating in front of the whole world his plans on brainwashing because so many people are turning on Israel. So he was asked what he plans to do about it. And you know what? Since I'm just yapping, I'm just gonna go ahead and go on this topic now too.
And he doesn't mince words with Benjamin Netanyahu. He directly calls out the violence that the IDF is doing on the Palestinians. He's also very critical of Benjamin Netanyahu's flex of authority.
Damn to free speech, Benjamin Netanyahu's got other ideas. It's something he's talked about plenty in the past. He's not exactly shy with it. He's very loosey-goosey with the censorship topic, and he's talking about it again. He recognizes how everyone sharing videos and information about the atrocities and all the slaughter of the Palestinians at the hands of the IDF is making people turn on Israel. So now genocidal freak is going up to Elon Musk. Oh, Mr. Musk, can we do something about all these pesky voices sharing all of this? It's censorship.
These are all extremely sharp critiques that are pressing and necessary to have right now. Accountability is sparse these days, and it's important to try to achieve that.
Yeah, that's his strategy, a galaxy brain chess maneuver here. Call everyone that doesn't support Israel Nazis. Whoa, holy shit, he's alting right now.
Not to detract too much or really anything of what he's saying, let's be real here. It's an absolutely justifiable take. But does his phrasing of things sound familiar to you?
But today out of nowhere, the delightful children from down the lane published a real prostate-tickling article on CNN called Why Kids Love Fascist Cartoons Like Paw Patrol and Thomas the Tank Engine. And man, is this one hell of a read. This article really sums up 2017 nicely. This is pretty much what American culture has devolved into. Everything's fascist, everything is Nazi, everything is bad, everyone is evil, and here's why.
The implication of the 2017 article is vastly different than Benjamin Netanyahu calling everybody that opposes Israel and its genocide the woke right. What I hope is that Critical now understands that there is a difference between the implications of these two. One was entertaining the idea of examining themes in children's media while encouraging parents to talk to their kids about the media that they engage with. The other is an authority figure that is attempting to dissuade dissent. In the long-ass video, I brought up a critique that Moist Critical was attempting to shut down discourse about fascist themes in media.
Children would still get the satisfaction of immersing themselves in an orderly universe where rules are rules and everyone is in his or her place, just without the white guy on top. Oh, so there's the real problem with the cartoons. There's a white guy on top, apparently. I don't even think that's accurate for these shows, but according to Alyssa, the problem is the white devil.
White supremacy is not only a hierarchy, but it is also inherently coercive, and shows examples of this within the very system that we see today, including the very FBI report of law enforcement being infiltrated by white supremacists. Not to mention, race wouldn't be enforced as a class system until colonialism. So, who conquered who, Critical? And if Ryder and Sir Topham Hatt are the top dogs and they're being represented as white men, then What? It's like, are you serious? Of course they're white men. White men are the generally accepted status quo. You're a white man. I don't mean to make it personal against you, but you brought this onto yourself here because you did this part of the video so shittily. I genuinely believe that this is a sign of growth and that this is a great time to revisit the older material in particular and maybe reflect on it. And I think that Moist Critical should engage in some kind of very open discourse, maybe not just with himself, but perhaps with his audience. And I also think more importantly, talking about anti-fascism or countering fascism, especially with his critiques of anti-woke culture. Of course, there's definitely a gap in the severity of the initial topics that are being covered here. They're not equal topics of severity, but I think we now are at a point here to where perhaps maybe we can actually revisit that 2017 video and actually have a conversation about the implications of his words from back then. Because throughout his I Can't Believe This Timeline video, he continues to spit bars about Ted Cruz, pretty much going for round 2 from an earlier video, and then actually connecting that to his support and alliance to Israel.
Like, I made a video the other day about Ted Cruz with his slip-up where he said to stop attacking pedophiles.
Senator Booker also said we should have bipartisan agreement. I think that's a great idea. We should have bipartisan agreement. How about we all come together and say, let's stop murders? How about we all come together and say, let's stop rape? How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles? I want you to look at what happened when the National Guard went to D.C.
Quite the Freudian slip. And as I said, there's no way he meant to say that. But he never corrects it or anything. No one points it out. And what he's talking about didn't pertain to pedophiles at all. His crime statistics were robbery, homicide, and rape. 2 out of 3 of those he covered previously. The last one, robbery, that doesn't relate to stopping attacking pedophiles. Like, those two don't connect. You can't put the square piece into the circle hole on that one. And I saw people saying that it was intellectually dishonest to paint it as anything other than just like an embarrassing flub. Which is fair enough, I suppose, because I'm not trying to make the claim that this is him fully admitting to things and he's going full mask off. Ted Cruz did, notably, reject the release of the Epstein files. Like, from all available information, it seems he has been against the release of the Epstein files, judging from his votes in regards to it. But I'm gonna harp on Ted Cruz for a moment, because I just don't understand the glaze. I don't know how he has fucking hog riders. I do not get the Tedophiles that will defend him tooth and nail, when he himself has said that the reason he got into Congress 13 years ago is to defend the interests of Israel.
I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate. Right. And I've worked every day to do that.
So you are an American politician whose sole purpose for being here is to defend the interests of a foreign nation here, domestically. I just don't know how that's not treasonous. I'm just gonna say it. I don't get how that is not just like full-blown treason.
Ooh, spicy take, but let's talk about this for a second because I feel like this detail is important. In my long-ass video, I paid particularly close attention to the detail of nationalism as a defining feature of fascist movement. This is evident in Christian nationalism, which is the backbone of Project 2025 and the Trump administration, and Zionism, the settler colonial ideology that backs Benjamin Netanyahu's political goals. What I'm concerned about is your use of the word treason. Treason to the people or treason to the nationalist image of the United States? I guess another way to phrase it is, what's more important to you? The people, all people deserve all well-being, or the sanctity of the nationalist image on the global stage? This is not a question that I can answer for you. Of course, I've already answered this question for me a long time ago, but I'm asking this question for you because I'm pretty certain that you would say, hell be damned with the nationalist image on the world stage. But we have to recognize that nationalism is the means in which the nation state uses to manufacture consent in terms of legitimizing its own atrocities. So when I ask what you mean by treason, I ask treason to who? The nation state or to the people? in which Ted Cruz governs and represents. I mean, I know what he's saying here. It's ridiculous that we're paying taxpayer dollars for our government to just finance a genocide that another country is doing. But that you also give a shit about those Palestinian people who are dying in the hands of Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. And again, I'm not trying to mince his words here. I'm just saying that he needs to be extremely clear where he's coming from when he makes these broader critiques. Because there's this crazy conspiracy theory, which I don't agree with, that says that Israel is pulling the strings of the United States, and that therefore Israel secretly owns the United States. I don't believe that is true at all. If you know anything about US imperialism, you know that it is the other way around. Because no matter which administration it is, whether it be under Biden or Donald Trump, you have to recognize that all it takes is one phone call for the United States to say, we're not funding this anymore. No, it is the United States who are pulling the strings here. Which comes back to our initial question, who is Ted Cruz being treasonous towards? Because all of these horrible atrocities that you've not only just highlighted, but also have highlighted in previous videos regarding Jeffrey Epstein, Israel, anti-woke bullshit, all of that is baked into the DNA of not just American culture, but also the United States government. All of this is just recycled Nazism and McCarthyist bullshit, just recontextualized for 2025. Anyway, all of this is not a serious critique of mine, it's more of a nitpick rather than a genuine critique. But overall, fantastic video. I don't really have too many complaints outside of the ones that I highlighted. Because me and YouTuber Big Dad Pirates have been calling for this for a long time. For Critical to have a voice, to have a spine in some of these atrocious moments of history. So this isn't an isolated incident, because a year ago in his video, Moist Critical Situation is crazy. He's very open about his stance against anti-woke bullshit, and he even stands up for trans people. The majority of the video is about his debate with Sneeko, an alt-right motherfucker who ran away to kick when everybody didn't like him. Sneeko has a history of legitimizing pedophilic behavior on his platform, and Critical was criticizing Sneeko, holding him to his words here. He was pressing him pretty hard, to be honest with you.
Get back a little bit. Do you think there's not a problem with a child being with an adult?
Okay. We haven't even agreed upon what a child and an adult is. You keep saying that it's 18.
Under 18 is child.
And I'm
over 18
telling
is
you,
adult.
that's not even the definition of the word.
What is the number? It needs to be a number, or else you can do the same thing.
I just told you there's not a number.
Do you see why that's a problem?
No.
If there's no defined... So why can't a 12-year-old marry an 18-year-old?
Because most 12-year-olds haven't gone through puberty yet. And most 12-year-olds...
What if, as you just said, it changes. What if a 12-year-old went through puberty early, the parents consent, the 18-year-old and the parents consent? Can they do it?
Most likely that's not going to happen. You know why? Because Islamically, if
we're not talking most likely. Just say it.
If the families have consented, the kid is mature, the kid is ready. Why should I stop
at 12 years old? At 12 years old.
If the kid is physically mature, the parents consent, both parties are happy.
A 12-year-old being physically mature.
If that's the only line that actually makes sense.
It is extremely creepy that he is arguing in favor of this disgusting behavior, but it's also important that Critical is arguing against this point, especially on his platform, and it's good that he made this video because Sneeko would continue to follow up with other whataboutisms.
But the big one, and this is what most people have focused on, which was my response to his question about kids transitioning. And the way he would pose that question would be by asking if I thought it was okay if kids who want to switch their gender go to the doctor and get their dick cut off. Is it okay if a 9-year-old goes to a doctor and gets their cock cut off right then and there? And when posed with that question, I replied with yes. And I've talked about this on stream many times now, and I'll talk about it again here. I thought he was talking in hyperbole. I thought he was just exaggerating, being over the top, talking about the entire subject of transitioning. I had no idea that any living, breathing human being actually thought that that's how transitioning works, where you just go into a doctor saying, I feel like switching genders, and they lay you down on the operating table and just snip your whole fucking meat off. I didn't know that that's what he actually believed. I didn't know he was speaking literally. I thought he was just referring to the entire process of transitioning and just using this over-the-top statement to encapsulate all of it. Because you literally cannot get that surgery unless you are 18. Yeah, like, you actually have to go out of your way to be that stupid on the topic than you would just spending a couple of seconds looking it up. There are very rare cases where someone under 18 has had that surgery performed. That's not common. So I really didn't think that someone could be so dumb on the topic. I thought he was just speaking in hyperbole, which is my mistake. I should have been more clear instead of making an assumption that he was talking about something nuanced in an over-the-top way. I haven't hid this take, and it's not a new take from me. I've talked about this a couple times throughout the years on stream. I have no complaints if a kid gets interested in transitioning and starts talking to their family about it. So their parents start talking to doctors, the kid starts talking to doctors and therapists and all of this, because the process of transitioning is one that takes place over the course of many years. It's not something that just happens like that. And I'm also not afraid to admit that I am not the most educated when it comes to transitioning. I am not someone that has a ton of knowledge about the subject to be speaking on it in a really in-depth manner. But even I know these very surface level things that everyone has easy access to understand. It is a long process, and I have no problems at all if a kid gets interested in that process and starts going through that process with proper care. And then when they reach the age where they can consider that surgery and decide they want to do it, then that's all power to them. That's entirely up to them. They have reached that age. They can now do that surgery if they want to. That is not a surgery that's being offered to like a 9-year-old who just says, I feel like changing genders today.
Critical is not only demonstrating resistance towards Sneako's very easily debunkable transphobic arguments, but he's also expressing knowledge of the topic because he knows about the topic. He's at least read about the topic. This is information that a lot more people do need to have access to. But you have to understand that that is the goal of the Trump administration, to completely censor any accessibility on transgender healthcare. And I think that having him highlight the very real nature of the very subject that he's talking about in explicit detail that is absolutely necessary for everybody who's even engaging in a topic to be equipped with in the first place is so needed right now. Especially with the rampant groomer propaganda that we see coming from the United States government and from the right wing. It's important that he's doing this also when arguing against a pedophile, which I think then becomes a necessary part of our discourse here, and that is pedophilia flourishes under hierarchy in fascist environments. And I think it would be very important for Moist Critical to learn from this, to be able to recognize, okay, this is something that is systemic, and this is something that we can understand as fundamentally rooted in systemic problems, such as capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy. If we begin to understand fascism as a far-right ultranationalist political movement dedicated to the monopolization of political and state violence, the national identity, the fetishization of the strength and machismo of such a country, all built on hatred against designated outgroups and the desire to return to a fictional, nationalistic, nostalgic, idealized past. That is when I think we can really have these open conversations questioning how do we defeat fascism once and for all. One warning I have about Moist Critical is conflating Jewish people with Zionists. There are Jewish Zionists, and as I've said in my Do You Condemn Israel video, there are Zionist Israeli politicians who should be deeply ashamed of themselves, but they're not because they're doing a fucking genocide. But just like the United States, they're also covering up for their own pedophile scandals, including one that I covered on the same video, Do You Condemn Israel? The cybersecurity expert Tom Alexandrovich. He was caught in the United States border also engaging in a very similar scandal to Jeffrey Epstein, all with Cr1TiKaL running for cover for him. My advice for going after these horrible politicians is to always follow the money and to always recognize that power begets power and that they're just addicted on power. Power allows these plutocratic scumbags to avoid accountability, and that goes for pedophilic structures too, like the Catholic Church, or the Epstein files, or the Israeli government, who are all members of the billionaire class, and that's the important distinction here. This is a class system. It's important to recognize that and to be able to analyze current events under those scopes. Now, there's another thing that I want to bring up that I'm also very concerned about, and that is there's a lot of people saying that Moist Critical hasn't spoken up about Israel and Palestine for so long because he was afraid of losing his financial backers or his supporters or, his bottom line as a YouTuber. I don't know if that's true personally, but I don't know if I necessarily care, because I make these videos that you're watching from Ko-Fi donations, and really that's where I am here with all of that. And I have not gained any extra funding or defunding because of my speech against Israel. I say that I don't know for sure if that was the reason why Critical wasn't speaking against Israel, not because I doubt him, but just because I don't know for sure what's going on inside of his head. But what I can say is that if it is true that Moist Critical hasn't been outspoken against the Israeli nation state for this long for that intended reason, then I gotta say that's extremely cowardly. And I mean, those critics are not wrong when they say that you are. Like back in December when you made your Charlie Kirk video, you kind of fucking just blew over his damage in society and just said, I don't condemn violence.
So I wanted to wait for that to happen so that way I can make a video covering the entire situation here because I find it to be such a big deal. But since I was mainly talking about it on streams instead of in a video, which by the way, if I did do a video when it happened, a follow-up video, and then this video, people would accuse me of milking a tragedy. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. But because I was talking about it on streams, people accused me of trying to hide it there. Basically saying that doesn't count, it only matters if you make a video on it. So let me be crystal clear here. I think the assassination of Charlie Kirk, everything that happened here is fucking horrible. I think it is horrific, awful. I think it is terrible. And I'm aware that some people have been celebrating this. I find that to be fucking disgusting.
There does seem to be a lot of people harassing him and pressuring him to go and speak on certain issues, and I want to make it clear that that's not what I intend to do. I don't want people harassing him, but I do want people to put pressure on speakers like him to also use their platform to put pressure on hierarchy. I'm an anarchist. This is something that I primarily focus on a day-to-day basis. And so I appreciate it when he does sometimes, but then you also have to consider that at no point in this video does he ever truly argue or critique Charlie Kirk in any meaningful way other than to say that he just disagrees with Charlie Kirk.
Now, as I said on stream, I don't know much about Charlie Kirk, and I've seen a lot of people saying that now when giving their take on this, and I think a lot of them are just making that shit up because they don't want to get too deep into the nitty-gritty or anything. But truly, I have been very offline over the last year and some change, so I haven't seen a whole lot of Charlie Kirk. The things I know about him come through adjacent discussions, with Epstein files or South Park. Of course, after all this happened, I did see a bunch of the clips that people were tossing around from his talks or from debates, and it's things I don't agree with for sure. But even still, what happened here is bad.
But they are absolutely worth engaging with and critiquing still, even in light of his death.
How many people unnecessarily died because of DEI? Well, you could rest easy, because they say diversity is our strength. And now those little girls are dead. Those families are without their daughters. But hey, you have a black fire chief in Austin.
Arguably even more pressingly so now because of the method in which he was killed.
So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero.
It will not happen. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools.
And it's not like you don't talk about gun violence either, but you know what Charlie Kirk did talk about was Donald Trump covering up the Epstein files, but he said that he trusted the government.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands.
So I think we need to be particular here. Do you remember what I said about you in the first video? Centrist reactionary liberals, trying to remain neutral in the center without any real understanding of context and consequences for not knowing the context. Maintaining the status quo against people's will for political change, even if that change is necessary for a better future. Having a wish-wash relationship with fascists, performatively stating that you're against anti-Semitism and genocidal eugenics, while blocking the punch that Richard Spencer was struck by and missing the one that Nathan Domingo made. In 1931, Florence Reese wrote the song, "Whose Side Are You On?"
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We're starting our good battle. We know we're sure to win because we've got the gun. Thugs are looking very thin. Which side are you on?
Because I think it applies here, and I think that is fair. Because now that you're talking about Israel, now we can actually talk to the scope of everything that I've said in the previous video. I think you are capable of doing so, and I would even like to challenge you on that very contention. Not that I necessarily think that I can win a debate like how you were talking about with Sneeko. You don't necessarily like debating people.
I didn't know this was a debate nor a stream until about an hour and 40 into it, roughly somewhere in that ballpark. I am not a debater. I've never claimed to be one. I never want to be a debater. I've always said that I believe conversations are the most productive because debates always devolve into what side can score the most points by explaining their thought process, even if the position is wrong.
And I just think that this particular approach to politics in terms of discourse or rational thinking, I just believe that that is antithetical to materialist thinking. Because you're pretty much engaging with an us versus them mentality. What you should be looking for is exploitative systems that we see in our society and those people who support those exploitative systems in our society. Sometimes it is liberals, and we have to painstakingly explain to them over and over again why supporting the Democratic Party is not gonna help them out in the long run. Repeating the lesson that the Democrats are horrible, it gets tiring after a while, and so you then have to then point out the intersections of oppression, and the democratic institution is part of it. The Republican Party is the other part of it as well. You need to be able to identify these in the systemic way that you have, but do so at its root. Talk about plutocracy, a government run for the rich by the rich. This is where all of the hierarchical contradictions that you routinely point out in your videos, this is where the crux of it all is. Having a rooted understanding in your anti-hierarchical critique. And you know what it does? It helps your critiques of hierarchy and all of these horrible scandals that you talk about on a regular basis. It gives it weight because you're actually punching upward. You're punching at something that is very real instead of just merely sensationalized. Systemic critiques of police institutions and fascism, all of this stuff, it's not very sexy, right? It's not, clickbaity. It doesn't do well in the algorithms. But we have to understand that these things are necessary to be speaking on now. Because while it's really good that you're talking about Israel in a very critical light, in about 20 years from now, everybody will be against the Israeli genocide that is taking place against the Palestinians. You've had years to research this stuff and to ask questions. And I understand that everybody is on their political journey, and that is absolutely valid. But on the other hand, when it comes to things that truly matter, like people's basic human rights being violated, completely stripped from them, being massacred, slaughtered, in such inhumane and unlivable conditions. You have to understand that genocide is always going to be bad, no matter what. A genocide is a genocide when a state power is using its own propaganda wing and its military wing to justify and to enact a fucking massacre of people. Is indefensible. And I think it's really good that you're stepping in the right direction. But I always want to remind you to be careful. Just be mindful about always punching upward. That's where your platform is going to be the most effective. If you give in to the grift, if you give in to like whatever is sensational, that's going to get you down a path that might benefit you financially, but it's going to actually hurt so many more people across society. So I always want to encourage critical thinking, logic, research, and reasoning when it comes to critique of the status quo. And just really ask yourself, did we really need Critical to explain to us that murder is bad? And he's even acknowledged this twice in his video.
Politically motivated assassination, which, if you ask me, is a horrible thing. And my heart breaks for the family that is now without a father. I think it is bad. I know. Classic Charles with a grass is green take. It still doesn't change the way I feel about this being a horrifying, terrible thing that happened to him. I think that's very standard. I know people are going to find that to be just, yep, grass is green take from Charlie, but it's the truth.
We don't need to be reminded that murder is bad, obviously. Like, do you not see how fucking redundant you sound?
They also found 4 bullet casings that were engraved with messages on them. Notices bulges, OWO, what's this? A furry meme, hey fascist, catch, and then had up arrow, right arrow, and then down arrow 3 times, which people were quick to pick up on as a Helldivers reference. Oh, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, which is apparently a reference to an Italian anti-fascist song. If you read this, you are gay, LMAO. Politics has become turbocharged over just the last handful of years.
Yeah, no shit, because you went on to also say this in the same video.
Now, with all the available information about what they found, as well as like where he's potentially been, to me, it seems like he's more left-leaning than right, but nothing is 100% confirmed, and there's so much information it's hard to know for sure.
Unfortunately, from what I could see, and maybe my research is off, but he has not followed up this statement with any further development into the investigation, such as a particular detail that I think he is missing.
I am declaring a new Groyper war against the Trump campaign until we can figure out what the hell is going on.
I know that you like to critique psychos, Critical, but I think you need to up your game a little bit. I think you can get spicier now. I think you can actually leap and bound into places you thought were just impossible before. But I want to say that I am very proud of you, Moist Critical. Like, you've really, really grown since 2017. And I actually would like you to take a time to yourself to just say, yeah, I am a lot smarter than I was back then. But I also would like you to continue to always talk to yourself and think about how you're using your platform. Is it effective? Is it punching upward? Is it class conscious? Is it dialectical in its understanding of the overall framework? And then of course ask yourself, is this the best use of my platform here on YouTube? And is it even worth giving air to? Because I do think at times there are things that you could have said much sooner than now. Waiting for a genocide to be unpopular in order to be one of those speakers against it is very cowardly, because there are people right now who have lost their freedom of speech, including Mahmoud Khalil, all because they're against the genocide. So you're like way behind them, and these are people who pretty much have nothing at stake except for their chains, which is why I touched upon privilege in my too long as fuck video. But I think you're getting it. I think you're doing much better, and honestly, I am very proud of you. I am happy that you have made this much growth, and I encourage you to continue to push forward into progression all the time, to continue to grow, to continue to ask questions, to continue to question authority, to continue to fight for justice. But in doing so, you need to retain a spine. You need to not be cowardly and to just wait until something is socially acceptable to be the subversive voice. That's not subversive in the first place. You need to be against genocide, fascism, and all of these intersections of oppression all the time. It's kind of like what we tell Democrats to not just engage in politics during election year, because the rest of the 4 years, you're kind of just like watching the world burn. But anyway, I hope that this was constructive, more so than anything else. And if it's not too much to ask, I do wish to hear from Critical on this video. I would love to have a video response to this, just to be able to actually get some answers on some of these things that I've talked about in the past. And even though this is my current opinion of Moist Critical now, it's much more favorable, I think he has more explaining to do. So until next time, thank you for watching.